thank you for joining us on this 14-day Baltic cruise as we go through Skagen and Copenhagen in Denmark, Warnemunde in Germany, overnight in Stockholm, Sweden before heading to Tallinn, Helsinki, and Kristiansand before we return back to Southampton on this cruise. Now, as we depart out of Southampton here, we are absolutely starved, and we're going to go ahead and start off with a full buffet tour here on our debarkation day. I actually like the way that they have done the buffet line here on the Sky Princess. It's very similar to all the other royal class of ships that Princess has put out. It is a huge variety of food, and the food is actually very good. The way they've done their buffet on these class of ships is one of my favorite ways that they could do some sort of a buffet line. There's actually 3 separate areas that you can walk through with the center, and lots of seating around it, and then they have a dedicated pastry, bakery, specialty coffee room that's kind of off on its own to handle everything else. So this buffet is great. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's all kinds of offerings. They are able to actually stagger their opening times as well, the way this buffet is set up. So you'll end up with a forward portion of the buffet will be open about a half an hour before the aft section of a buffet, and then that aft will stay open later for different people coming in at different times. Makes for a really nice way to handle a buffet. So all right, and then after we had something good to eat there, we decided to go up on deck and start getting some pictures of the harbor here in Southampton so that you can get an idea of what this area is like. And right before we went ahead and started taking off for our cruise and heading out. That evening we ended up going up for dinner in their dining room. And after some delicious food, we ended up heading back to the Vista Lounge at the back of Deck 7 for that night's music and entertainment. Our next day was simply a day at sea as we headed up through the North Sea on our way to our first stop, and we really didn't do a whole lot more that day other than hang out by the pool and go to dinner later that evening because we knew that our trip was actually going to be very packed with a lot of different ports. So we were trying to take it easy here at the beginning before we ended up heading on to our first stop in Denmark. We did have a little bit of fun later that evening, though, as we went off for a little bit of nightly entertainment.
Yeah, no.
Australians, no. Yeah,
no, yeah, no, keep it. You can't say any other different languages. I know some people are trying to find, but we've got all the different languages. You can't be like, we.
The first port that we came to on our cruise was here in Skagen in Denmark. Now, Skagen is just a nice little port town that's just really picturesque right here in the northern part of Denmark. And we really didn't book any specific tour or anything else. We decided to just go ahead and get off and start walking through the town here. It was maybe a 10-minute walk to get into town. It wasn't anything spectacular. It was very easy to do. So we decided that this wasn't a town that we were going to spend any money on cruise ship tours or anything like that. We just wanted to go see what the town was like. And we were actually very happy. It was just a beautiful, picturesque little town. It was easy to walk through. There was a lot of nice little shops all over the place. There was tons of things down this main walkway to either go shopping or get food at. They had little park areas here. And it really made it for just a nice, pleasant, easygoing little day. And as always in some of these countries, you'll find these pastry shops that just have absolutely amazing, delicious baked goods and coffees and things like that are phenomenal. Just kind of sit down, hang out, and have something to eat for a minute there. And then as you end up walking through these towns, you see all the different little monuments and the different buildings that are all over the place here. It's actually neat to just see how some of the locals interact. The the beautiful landscaping that some of these homes had through here was just incredible. These flowers were just absolutely beautiful. I couldn't not take some video of what this looked like here. This is just beautiful. And on our way back, we even stopped at just this nice little square here that was picturesque again. So now that evening we did end up just going to the dinner buffet that night. So I'll give you a quick little walkthrough here of what the actual dinner buffet is. It's a little bit different than what they may do at lunch. So they'll have slightly different offerings to kind of fit more to a dinner style, but it's still the same really great food and really just an extensive buffet for both lunch and dinner here as well. And then that evening we ended up going to the Vista Lounge for our nightly entertainment.
So anyway, welcome, thank you. Have I got any Eric Clapton fans in the audience? So don't you go and say goodbye. Love is all that matters, you can stay with me. Don't you ever leave me. Lay down, Sam. And I know there'll be no more tears here in heaven. Do you feel alright? And I say yes, I feel wonderful.
The second port that we came to was here in Copenhagen in Denmark. Now, the tour that we took here in Copenhagen was through the cruise ship. And we did that because we wanted to kind of see all of Copenhagen, and there is a lot to see in Copenhagen. It is a large city. So we got picked up right here in the port by the bus that took us out of the port area and started taking us out through the city to kind of get an idea of what the city life was like and give us, a narrated guided tour of what goes on here in Copenhagen and a little more of the history and whatever else that goes on. And it also took us out to this very famous statue here of the Little Mermaid that we came to. And this is apparently the huge tourist draw here, is it's the Little Mermaid statue. So it's filled with people and it's a very busy place, especially when there's a cruise ship in port. But after that, they hopped us back onto the bus and off we went to go touring around to some other areas, getting more into the downtown of Copenhagen and giving us a little bit more of a tour. Now, Copenhagen is an absolutely beautiful place. Tivoli is its own theme park, its own little amusement park right here in the downtown of Copenhagen. It's kind of interesting that they just put it right there along the canals and all the buildings and everything else, but it is its own park and an amusement area. So after a bunch of driving around through Copenhagen with some more information about it, we ended up getting off the bus and they gave us some time to just walk around in this area, in this huge square that was here in downtown Copenhagen. We got to do just a little bit of sightseeing, see some of the shops. We ended up going and visiting kind of the birthplace of Lego here. This is a huge Lego store that they have, and Denmark is absolutely famous for Lego there. And apparently somebody's looking for some ice cream before we finish our little walking tour of the area. And Copenhagen does have a huge bike culture. There are so many people riding around on bikes. We were told if you don't really know the etiquette, that you might want to look up in it before you rent a bike and try to get around through Copenhagen on one. So after our little walking area there, we ended up getting on a canal boat tour, and that's something that a lot of people will just kind of go out and do, have some lunch, go on a boat ride. Ours was a big guided tour that took us through all of the canals, and you come really close to those bridges. These boats are all designed to be able to pass through all of the different bridges that run across the canal and the river areas here in Copenhagen. There's so many bridges. I honestly don't remember how many there were, but it is just one after another after another. There's so many places to cross the canals and get through. and they're all different. They're all different architecture, all different styles. It's actually really amazing. So this one is actually called the Kissing Bridge. So I'm not sure why no one else was kissing, but we decided we were going to go ahead and honor the tradition there. So it was a really nice tour through all of the waterways here in Copenhagen. It was really neat. So a lot of people do live on boats here. That's another really huge thing in Copenhagen. Lots of people have a boat, live on a boat. It's part of the culture here in such a huge way right here in downtown Copenhagen. It's pretty impressive. So again, every bridge is unique and different in its own way. There's so many different kinds. It's really neat. Some move, some don't. It's really impressive. So anyway, as we end up finishing up through the waterway tours here, I'll just go ahead and kind of let you enjoy a bunch of the views here as we end up cruising through the waterways of Copenhagen here. So hopefully you're enjoying this cruise tour so far, and if you find it useful or helpful or entertaining in any way, please don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. We'd really appreciate it, and it really helps out our channel. At the conclusion of our tour, we ended up hopping on the bus and heading back to the ship for our departure out of Copenhagen. And that evening we did have a little bit of entertainment. We went off to the Take 5 Lounge to listen to some music before we headed off to our stand-up comedian for that evening's final entertainment. Now, our third stop that we came to was down in Germany in Warnemunde. So Warnemunde is the port town area here for the cruise ships, and it is typically a stop where they take train tours down into Berlin. It's close enough that if the ship stays there for a long period of time that day, and our ship was there until I believe 11 o'clock at night, you can do a train ride down into Berlin and do the tour and grab a train ride back, and you'll make it before the ship departs. We chose not to do that. We chose to walk around Warnemunde because the train ride down was somewhere between 3 and 4 hours each way. So we decided that we would go ahead and simply take a tour that was there locally and not run that entire full day of excursion with all that time spent on the train. So we ended up stopping here and grabbing a bite to eat at one of these just really beautiful cafes in Warnemunde before we did our kind of walking tour throughout the area here. It was a little bit rainy that morning, but the weather was nice and warm. It was nothing that was cold or miserable or anything like that, and it kind of broke throughout the day as the day got going. But Warnemunde is a picturesque little town. You can kind of come walk through this area and see all the little shops, all the different little places to go eat, and kind of have a nice, enjoyable little time here. So it was our morning entertainment for the time that we spent there, because we did end up booking an afternoon excursion. Since the boat was there all day, we can have our morning here in Warnemunde, walking around and seeing all of its different sites and kind of walking through and heading on out to, they do have a nice little beachfront area out here in Warnemunde that is actually really beautiful that you can go take a look at. And it made it for a really relaxing morning for us. We didn't have any time constraints. We just kind of wanted to go out and see the town. So as we ended up wandering back to the ship so that we could make our tour, we ended up cruising along the waterfront here with just absolutely beautiful the way that they've made this town look. It's beautifully well kept. So the waterfront is just beautiful. Tons of boats, restaurants in the boats, obviously really well kept, beautiful landscaping. This is an absolutely beautiful little place to go walk through and enjoy. So our afternoon tour was out to Vismar, and it was a bus ride to get over to Vismar, but it was only about 45 minutes. So, and it was just a nice little ride to go see the countryside up here in northern Germany. It was just picturesque farmlands and wind turbines and everything else before you ended up heading into this wonderful little town here in Vismar. So Vismar it's a bit of a port town, and just like everything up here, they have their own little port areas, but it's beautiful in every other way. And from my understanding, a lot of this area was part of East Germany before the fall of the wall in East Germany. That's the town where the original Nosferatu was filmed, and they have these just incredible churches and cathedrals that are in some ways still being restored. A lot of these were all damaged as part of World War II, and some of it's being rebuilt, still being restored. Some of it's just being preserved at this point. That one we couldn't go in, but then we were able to kind of come over to this one so you can kind of get an idea of what some of these old cathedrals and churches were like on the inside. This one is a nice functional one that you can kind of go tour. We just perused through the town of Vismar for a little bit and ended up getting to kind of see some of the sights a little bit. It was, again, just very nice, easy, relaxing tour throughout the town. Nothing too strenuous. And as part of our tour that we booked on this, we ended up getting to do a beer tasting here in Vismar. This is an old original brewery. They still brew the beer in their original brewing methods. We got a couple of different beers to try, some really good pretzels that go along with it. It was really excellent. They have lots of different types of beers that you can get here, but it was a really neat thing to go do to kind of hear about the tradition that the brew making has here in Vismar. It was a neat little trip to go on. Now, after that, we ended up heading back to Warnemunde, where we ended up grabbing dinner out at a German restaurant so we could get something a little more traditional than ship food while we had plenty of time in port there. So now, our next day was just a day at sea here, where we ended up just kind of hanging out and enjoying the view here on the boat before we ended up spending a little bit of time on the deck and heading off to just these amazing sunsets here that we have out at sea. This was just another nice relaxing day at sea here. Now, our next stop was in Stockholm in Sweden. Now, when you go into Stockholm, you don't just kind of sail into a port area and get up to the dock and go get off the ship. In order to get into Stockholm, you have to go through the archipelago out here. And it is several hours of sailing through all of these insanely picturesque and beautiful islands. It was incredible to come out on deck early in the morning as the ship sailed through this collection of little villages and islands and just little bays and places that people actually do live out here in these archipelagos. I'm out here doing this, I think it was about 4:30 to 5 a.m. in the morning to come out and go do this. But because we're so far north, the sun is up and bright, and it's just makes for these just incredibly picturesque views that time of the morning. There's obviously a huge channel that the cruise ships can go through and be able to get in and out. We passed several ferries that go in and out of these areas before we ended up making our way here into the city of Stockholm itself. Now, Stockholm, we were there overnight, so we booked a couple of different things. We ended up booking a river tour. This one we ended up doing through the ship, which we later regretted because you can actually do what are called hop-on hop-offs in Stockholm, and it applies to both the bus on the land, and you can do the same thing for the boats that go throughout all the different islands that make up the city of Stockholm. So for future reference for everybody, if you just want to do an off-the-boat easy tour, you can just go to the Stockholm hop-on hop-off website. You can go to the hop-on hop-off booths that are going to be outside in the cruise port, where you can get both your boat ticket and your bus ticket as a combo to be able to come through and do the tour throughout everything that Stockholm has to offer, both on the water and on land. So future reference there. The tour through the waterways of Stockholm, it was beautiful. Stockholm is a beautiful city. They have an incredibly picturesque architecture. The waterways lead not just into the city and building areas, but they end up going out through this just park-like areas that exist throughout lots of different parts of Stockholm. They've done a really good job of keeping a lot of green space along the waterways here. Some of it's built up, some of it's not, but like I said, there's along the waterways, there's these huge park areas that you can just walk through and spend time in. Something just really incredible. So after that, we end up going back through all these different regions, all these different areas that people live. It's really incredible. There's obviously a huge boating culture throughout all of Stockholm and the archipelagos, as it's the main way to kind of get through all these areas. But there is also every amenity you could ever want in a big city. It's a nice mix of just about everything you could want in a place like this. So enjoy your time in Stockholm, and there is a lot to see. I was so happy that they ended up giving us an overnight here where we could spend as much time as we wanted without having to worry about getting back to the ship within a certain time, because not giving Stockholm that much time would actually be kind of sad. There's so many things to go see. So with that, we're going to go ahead and finish up the riverside portion of the tour here. We're going to end up grabbing onto the hop-on hop-off bus here so we can kind of drive through the actual city itself and see it a little more up close. We ended up, as part of our bus tour version of this, we ended up getting tickets to go to the Vasa Museum, and it's this museum that's kind of here in this nice little park-like area. The Vasa Museum is home to, I'm going to guess, probably just about the largest Viking ship restoration that has ever been made. This thing is huge, and there's no way I can do justice to how big this ship is on camera. It's massive in scale. You can't hardly get the entire ship in the frame, no matter how wide of an angle you use. So I had to do all of this in pieces and wrap it around, but it's massive. So worth the trip. It's not very expensive. I think it was 12 euros a person to go into the Vasa Museum and take the tour and see everything that was there. So it was a nice little walkthrough and enjoyable park area to go spend time in as well. Now, we also ended up getting back on the bus. We ended up heading off to see some of the nice different little areas that they have here in Stockholm, and just really relaxing, plenty of time. We ended up getting off at a stop because it was time to eat, and there's always a wonderful bakery. Stopped in a Hard Rock Cafe so I could get my souvenir shot glass of all the different Hard Rock cafes we've been to over the years. And then we ended up jumping off and heading over to this little recommended stop here where we could get some really beautiful unobstructed views across the water that were really panoramic throughout a lot of the Stockholm area here. This is a public building. It's some sort of government building that you can just kind of walk through and have a look, and then go out to the waterfront and go kind of see what's going on here. It's really pretty. It's just this beautiful park-like little area that anyone can come out and come visit and spend a little bit of time at if they want to. Again, they've done a great job of making this city very livable and very easy to enjoy, especially along all this waterfront here. So it's something that Stockholm has done extremely well, and the views across the water here are just exceptional. They're just beautiful here. So that kind of concludes our little bit of our daytime tour here before we ended up going back to the ship. And then we ended up coming back to the ice bar in Stockholm, which was so much fun because on this trip we did actually bring some cold weather clothing, thinking that we were going to end up in some cold places. So the ice bar we already had some clothes for, made it a little bit easier for us to deal with. They do give you the parka, they give you a couple drinks to go in and enjoy while you're there. It's actually really kind of a neat experience. We'd never been to anything like this, so that was, yes, it was cold, but it was fun. It was pretty interesting. Even the cups that you get your drink in, they're all ice. Everything's ice. So, and for those Star Trek fans, you'll understand what this National Sarek Park is about. So after the ice bar, we decided we wanted to walk back to the ship. We had originally taken a taxi from the ship to go over to the ice bar because we didn't necessarily want to walk that far. But late at night, we decided we'd take a little nighttime tour of Stockholm so you can get an idea of what the city is like here at night. And it was one of the nicest experiences I've ever had walking through a city. It was dark at night, but it was lively. There was things going on. There was stuff to go see. You never felt unsafe. There were incredible views. We walked several miles from the ice bar all the way back through the downtown area, up into some of these hilly areas, and then, yes, they do actually have an actual amusement park there in downtown Stockholm as well. And then right back into the port area before we got on the ship that evening, and ended up spending the next day sailing out. We didn't go out the next morning. We had been out pretty late, so we decided we'd go ahead and hang out on the ship in the morning and wait for the sail away the next day, because the ship did depart at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'd had to go out and do something pretty quick in the morning. But it made for, again, just this exceptionally picturesque sail out through the archipelago in Stockholm here. They done a really good job of making all of this accessible. They have ways for people to be able to get around through a lot of the different areas, whether it's by boat or by even car ferry. In a lot of the different areas here, you can actually catch car ferries that will take you between some of the different islands that exist out here. So just for those that are interested, those are huge. They can hold quite a few cars there. They're actually pretty cool. And that brings us to the end of our tour here before we head off to the Laugh Lounge for that night's entertainment.
That'll be me, sat next to a sunny window, being spoon-fed out of a blender. Come on, Mr. Daniels, open wide. Whee! Roast beef and apple pie all out the same blender. Oh, you look really sad, Mr. Daniels. Is that because all of your friends are dead? Yeah, they were the smokers. You've got 5 years to go! You always look as if they've had an argument with the microphone. And why do they look so surprised and smug with themselves when they change chords on the guitar? They wrote the song, surely they know what's coming. Have you not noticed that? They're like this.
Today was gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should somehow realize what you gotta do. I don't believe anybody feels the way I do about you now.
So our next stop after Stockholm was in Tallinn in Estonia. And we'd never really read up or seen anything too much about Tallinn or Estonia. It was a kind of a surprise for us as to how incredibly nice this city is. And it's kind of an interesting little city. They were part of the former Soviet Union. They have now become their own independent city. They have a lot more to do with Stockholm, Sweden, Finland. They have a lot more involvement with those other countries than they do with anything in Russia at this point. So they've adopted more of the point of view of those countries that they tend to trade more with. They are so close to Helsinki that they have daily ferries that run back and forth multiple times a day. And people even work in Estonia and live in Helsinki and vice versa. They do still honor some of that past here. They do have this monument here that is for the time when they were part of the Soviet Union. They do recognize what that was all about here. It's kind of a interesting monument. Wasn't too clearly explained, but from what I understand, there's a little bit of controversy about it, but it's kind of neat what they've done here with the little holes in the wall that show images that they've been able to collect of some of the people that they honor here. There's a whole description here about it if you'd like to read all about it. Just give a pause there. But it's interesting right there on the waterfront. So now Tallinn is made up of it's almost like 3 distinct areas. So the area that we're driving through down here now is kind of the newer, more modern area down on the waterfront, down at the water level, some of the newer stuff that's come up. We started off down there and then we went into the upper part of Old Town. And this upper part of Old Town is what was kind of the old original Estonia, up on the hill, protected in a lot of different ways. They have this just beautiful church here. This is incredible. It looks amazing. The architecture is incredible up there. So the tour took us through a lot of the different parts of Old Town where we could just do a lot of walking around. There's not a lot of really big roads up here. There's some that'll let you get around, but most of it is for walking and for views of what you see down into the lower part of Old Town and then looking out into the new modern area that's been built up in the distance. So they've kept kind of all 3 parts, the original Old Town, the lower Old Town, and the new modern area that surrounds all of that. And they've tried to preserve it in a way that makes it really, really nice. And they've done a great job. It's beautiful up here. So if anybody is ever considering a trip and they see Tallinn come up as one of their options, go. It's a beautiful place. They have a lot of these just cool little bakeries as well that we had to stop in and grab something to eat. Smelled so good. They were actually making the croissants right in that oven as we were there. It was unreal. They have a lot of their old original architecture and they've done a great job of preserving all of this stuff. So made for a really nice day to go walk around. And they've also been keeping up with a lot of modern times as well. So from what I understand, Estonia's government is now very much all online. They give internet to everyone for free. Every person that has a home or a way to get internet, it's free of charge. It's provided by their government as a way for them to be able to have access to government services such as voting and identification and all that other stuff. So anyway, they've done a great job trying to bring their society out of the old Soviet Union mindset. So anyway, they've also opened up to all of this nice new construction. The city's being built up really nice. There's a lot of really cool architecture. So as we headed back to the ship, this is the terminal for the cruise port. This is beautiful in here. They did an amazing job there at their cruise port. This is a beautiful area to go walk through, and they've built a lot of things up around it to provide services for people that are there either on cruises or just for different reasons with the ferries coming across. This area here is really, really nice. So that evening we actually went out to dinner at an Argentinian steakhouse that they do have right here by the port, and it was awesome. Their food was incredibly good. The steaks were awesome. The beer was awesome. All of the food was incredible. It was done in this beautiful old, almost looked like an old bunker style building or a storage building or whatever it was, but all the stonework was incredible. It really wasn't that expensive. We had filet mignons and ceviche and bread and desserts and vegetables and salads. It was absolutely delicious food. And I don't think we spent maybe €100 for the meal. It was incredible. So anyway, just as a reference, if you want to go to a nice steakhouse there in Tallinn, that one's really, really good. So after the dinner, we ended up heading back to the ship, where we ended up heading off to Helsinki for our next port of call on the very next day. So here in Helsinki, we did actually book another tour that took us throughout a lot of Helsinki, and we did it through the cruise line. So partly because to get into the city of Helsinki, the port is kind of a ways away, but it was neat to kind of be able to come out here in the morning and film all of the different cruise ships and ferries that were kind of coming in and out as the morning got going here. But it's kind of fun there. The tour itself that we took was, again, another one of those combo tours where we got to go drive through the city of Helsinki before we ended up getting onto a boat tour that took us out through the waterways and the bay areas in Helsinki. But again, started off through the city here. The city here is beautiful in Helsinki. It's like any of these other Scandinavian cities. It's got its own architecture. It's got its own parks with all of its own artwork and all of these beautiful little walkways to go through and head out to the water and go see what's going on. It's a very, very picturesque town here in Helsinki. So it was really nice to be able to get off the bus here and kind of be able to stretch our legs and walk around down here at the waterfront through this park and spend a little bit of time seeing that area before we did end up hopping back on the bus to take us over to one of the harbors here in Helsinki before we could go ahead and we get off the bus again to go through this little area where we could get something to eat. There were all these beautiful little like harbor booths that you could get salmon and fruits and potatoes and all kinds of different food there, kind of right here in this nice little downtown area of Helsinki. And it was right here where we were actually going to go ahead and get picked up by the tour boat that was going to end up taking us out on just a nice sightseeing tour here of the harbor and the waterways here in Helsinki. So it was really picturesque, really, really nice. We really enjoyed kind of being able to just sit up here on the boat and relax and see all the different views throughout the harbor area here in Helsinki. So I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of tour in the harbor area here and get a little bit of time enjoying all the sights that the waterways here in Helsinki have to offer. So as our tour here concludes in Helsinki, I'm going to kind of give you a little rundown of what happened with our next port of call, which was supposed to be in Visby in Sweden. When we got back on the boat and started heading down to Visby, we ended up going and not being able to tour and get off the boat in Visby, Sweden, because the weather was so bad and the winds were so strong in the area here. Unfortunately, we had to miss this port of call because the weather really was absolutely terrible that morning, and we just simply had to move on and head off to our next port of call, and that was really what we did there that day, was just go back and take a nap because the weather was so bad. But we headed off for our next day at sea, which the highlight of that day was us passing under this huge bridge. Now, this bridge, I believe, is called the Öresund Bridge, and it connects Malmö in Sweden, on the southern end of Sweden, into Copenhagen in Denmark. So it gives you kind of a idea of just how tall this bridge is, that a 140,000 ton cruise ship doesn't have any trouble passing underneath this thing. It gets a little close in a few places, but it is got plenty of space for us to actually make it through. We trusted the captain to know whether or not he was going to hit the bridge there. So it's actually a huge bridge that connects into some tunnels that ends up going back and forth into the different islands that they've created to be able to make that all work there. So, and then after our passing under the bridge, we apparently were hungry again and decided to go off to dinner that night in the main dining there. And then after some dinner and really delicious dessert, it was time to head off to that evening's entertainment for rock opera. Unfortunately, rock opera is one of those that Princess does not allow you to record. Unfortunately, there are a number of different events and entertainment that's up in the main theater that Princess really doesn't allow any audio or video recording of. So sorry, this was the best I could do for you here. Now, the final port that we come to here on this cruise is Kristiansand in southern Norway. So here in Kristiansand, we did not do any tours through the cruise line itself. We ended up just getting off and walking around because where the cruise ship docked was actually right near the town and was easy to walk into. And those big tall sailing ships that were there in the harbor, kind of a prelude to what we're going to come to a little bit later on, but it was a beautiful little town to just kind of walk through their port here. And we're going to actually come back and see the difference in this little port, like restaurant boat area here later on, and see the difference in the morning until the afternoon on this day. But obviously it was a very quiet morning here. We apparently got out before everybody else was out and about, so, but it wasn't that early. I don't think it was much before 8 a.m. So like every other wonderful little town in Norway, you can find a little bakery that's up and going and has some just absolutely delicious pastries and coffee that you can stop at in the morning and grab something to eat. Now, it did start to pick up a little bit later with foot traffic, and people started getting out and about, and people were getting off the cruise ship, and so it got to be a little bit busier, but it was by no means really hectic or anything like that. I mean, this was about as busy as it got for the foot traffic in that area, and there were some events that were going on here that day that we'll come to a little bit later with those sailing ships. So we decided to just kind of tour around and get you some really pretty video of the area here so you can get an idea of what the downtown area of Kristiansand looks like. It's beautiful architecture. That church is absolutely gorgeous. Lots of park space that they've left here in the middle of the town that you can kind of walk through here. And then just a very easy town to kind of walk through and take a look at here. The tour obviously took its toll on us, and we needed to stop for a lunch of additional food here, which again was just absolutely delicious again, because the pastries and coffee in the morning weren't enough. We needed a few more to get through the day. And then finally for a third stop at a fruit stand where we got to pick up some extra, slightly more nutritious food for us in the afternoon, but it was actually all really, really delicious food. And then after all of our walking around, we ended up deciding to go down to the waterfront area in their harbor to see all the different boats that they had going down here. It was here, the Tall Ship Races 2025, where they had music events and ship tours going on while we were there. All right, now after that really impressive performance, we were actually able to go tour one of these tall-masted sailing ships. They had them open to where they would let small groups of people come on at a time and be able to walk through the ship and kind of take a look at all of the different hardware and riggings and get a really nice view. And then after that really cool tour, we ended up going back through the little harbor area that we had walked through initially in the morning, where there were significantly more boats at this point before we ended up heading off, well, back to the reflection in this really cool architectural building of our ship and heading off to dinner that night, where we went into Ocean Terrace that evening to get dinner, where we could get some really good sushi at one of the casual, less expensive dining options that they do have here on the Sky Princess. So it made it a little less expensive of a specialty dining there. But after that, we ended up sailing out of Kristiansand and off to our final day at sea with just these absolutely stunning views in the evening sailing out. All right, now we are coming to our last and final day at sea here, where we did a nice relaxing day out here on deck as we were sailing out through the North Sea and heading back to Southampton. We had our last final dinner up in the main dining, where we did get a really nice prime rib dinner here to finish off our last day at sea before heading back home at the end of this cruise. So hopefully this video was helpful or entertaining and useful in some way. And if it was, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.